Now, everyone knows that following the collapse of Rome, Europe was plunged into 1,000 years of unbroken collapse, darkness, and generally bad hygiene, right? Wrong! While Western Europe did experience widespread chaos following the fall of Rome, there were periods of relative stability and prosperity. The first is known as the Carolingian Renaissance. But before we can understand the Carolingians, we have to understand the people they come from, the Franks. When Rome fell, the Franks were an obscure tribe of barbarians, mainly famous for their long flowing locks of hair, which they saw as the epitome of manliness. In the early 500s, legendary King Clovis, who gained power through skill in battle, built the Franks into one nation. He then forged an alliance with the Catholic Church and proceeded to kill off his entire extended family in an attempt to protect the unity of his kingdom after his death. He failed. The problem was Frankish inheritance practice. While the Romans gave all possessions to the eldest son, the Franks divided their possessions evenly, and this included kingdoms. Sounds fair? Maybe, but imagine if the US divided in half after every presidential election. Pretty soon you wouldn't have a country. Anyways, fast forward 200 years, this is exactly what happened to Clovis's descendants, the Merovingians. The realm was a weak mess divided into dozens of little mini-kingdoms. Enter the Carolingians. The family were mayors of the palace. They pretty much ruled the kingdom while the last Merovingian was off hunting, gambling, and generally acting like a 21st century celebrity. The mayors were strong, but never strong enough to take the crown for themselves. That is, until the poorly named Pepin the Short, who probably had a tough time on the playground as a kid, son of famous warlord Charles Martel, finally found the guts, and enough soldiers, to knock off the last Merovingian and his own brother to boot, and take the throne. Even so, Frankish inheritance seemed to be rearing its ugly head, as Pepin's kingdom was divided between his two sons after his death. The Carolingians might have faded into obscurity if one of those two sons hadn't been one of the biggest badasses in recorded history, Charlemagne. Charlemagne, bringer of the Carolingian Renaissance, was the unlikely combination of a Christian social reformer and a brutal warrior king. His reign got off to, a good start when his brother Carloman mysteriously ended up dead and he gained the entire realm. He proceeded to put on his warrior king hat and expand the kingdom, conquering and converting all pagans and Christians who stood in his way. When he wasn't off plundering Eastern Europe, he reformed administration, set up crude governing systems, and issued laws called capitularies, which essentially translate to English as "do this or I'll cut your head off." His main goal was the creation of a lasting structure for society. He also supported a literary revival with the highly idealistic goal of teaching every male in his kingdom to read. Because the Franks weren't exactly the most cultured people, he brought in an English monk named Alcuin of York to do all the hard stuff. Alcuin did his job well, saving many of Roman Greece's ancient writings by copying them down and inventing lowercase letters in the process. In reward for his efforts, and because his family had already saved Rome like 1,000,000 times, the Pope crowned Charlemagne Emperor of Rome in 800 AD, and the Carolingian kingdom literally became the Roman Empire. The Carolingians gave Europe 100 years of stability, and their collapse, along with the Vikings, heralded in the beginning of the real Dark Ages in the 900s. Thank you.
Created using Powtoon.